Hey y'all, Emu here, and welcome to what might become a regular series. I'm not sure. After my last video, my Gmod goofing around video part 1, um, after I did that, I realized that that video was very, very much a podcast with, just 10 minutes of skits at the end. um, which I was gonna do 2 videos, but I didn't want a 20-minute video and then a 5-minute video, so I just put them together. Um, and then after that, Joe also mentioned to me about it being kind of like a podcast and wanted to do a podcast, and I've been wanting to do a podcast for years. It's always something I wanted to do, and of course, right now, my family group chat is going nuts for no reason whatsoever. Uh, but yeah, I've always wanted to do the podcast thing. Cause it's funny because it's I'm not really a talkative person. I'm actually very, very quiet, kind of antisocial person. But when it comes to something I like, when it comes to something I love, I talk for hours. I talk forever. Uh, it's much easier to talk to a computer screen. As you can see, I'm located in this little podcast studio I've made for myself. It took me about an hour to set this up. Uh, yes. Actually, I'm actually in a closet right now. And much like Tom Cruise and John Travolta, I am not coming out of it. So, I was sitting for an hour in my chair, just trying to think about what to talk about, and a few different topics crossed my mind. But I think what I've settled on is I want to talk about the 10 most important games to me, or game series that have had some kind of an overall impact on my life in some way, either artistically or something that's shaped my taste or exposed me to something new or has had a real life impact on me. There is actually a game series that actually did have a very real impact on a portion of the trajectory that part of my life went in. So so I wrote down some, and I have some honorable mentions because you can't have a top 10 list without honorable mentions. This isn't a top 10 list. I just figured 10's a good number, but it's actually more like 15. But anyway, these aren't in a particular order. I just kind of wanted to talk, give my thoughts on some things, share some insights, give you a look into the terrifying mind of Snoopy Emu, and the once hopeful child he was, and whatever I am now. So, I guess probably one of the most important games in my life is one of the first games I ever played. So, first started playing video games when I was about 3 years old. Yes. I know I'm a precautionary tale for many parents. My first game system was, I played 2 around the same time. It was the Sega Genesis and the Sega handheld. I don't know if the handheld had a name. I don't know if that was the Dreamcast or if there was another console called that. But I initially started with Sega. Played a handful of games on there that I barely remember because I was 3. I do, however, recall my first video game, I believe, was Sonic. And I also played, there was a Bart Simpson skateboarding game, like a side-scroller. There was an X-Men Wolverine side-scroller. There was I think it was like an Ace Combat type game. And some others. There was a 3D golf game and Gauntlet 4. a lot of cool, fun little classics. But I was but a wee lad, and didn't really know what was going on. I was just playing the games. And then when I turned 4 and had a little more mental fortitude than the year prior, I remember this cool new thing came out called an Xbox. And I was at my grandparents' house, and my uncle brought his Xbox. I had 3 cousins growing up. I actually have like 13 first cousins. I have a lot of first cousins, but my uncle's 3 sons, they were basically my brothers. I was raised like right alongside them, even though there is a bit of an age gap between us. I think me and the oldest are 11 years apart. Me and the youngest are like 6 years apart. But they were playing this new game that had just come out on this brand new console called Halo Combat Evolved. And little Jordo saw Halo for the first time, and it changed my life. It was like nothing I'd ever seen before, obviously, because I was 3, and the only games I'd played up to that point were side-scrollers. Not a big side-scroller fan. That's just what was available to me. And not a big platformer fan in general. Anyone who knows me knows I'm terrible at platforming. Anytime a game has platforming in it, it's like the end of the world for me. Although I did grow up in like a big generation of platformers, like 3D platformers were huge when I was growing up. Like Tack, I think Vax, Blinks, the Time Sweeper, Banjo-Kazooie, Rayman, I think Conker was still around at that point. Was Sly a platformer? I don't remember. But those types of games were big when I was that age. But Halo Combat Evolved just grabbed me in this way. It was the coolest thing ever. And I'd never seen a first-person shooter. First-person shooters weren't really that popular at that point. Like Doom and Unreal Tournament and stuff existed at that point. I think GoldenEye, you had Wolfenstein, Quake, Half-Life, Red Faction. Like those existed, but they were a PC thing. They were like a niche thing. They were very niche. Like it was like a nerd, like a computer programmer type game. Normal people didn't really play those or know about them. So when Halo came out, it hit the world by storm. It was the biggest thing in the world. It was a big deal. And it was really, as Stephen Downes, the voice of Master Chief, said, it was a massive paradigm shift in the video game industry and in the world. And Halo was the biggest thing ever. And Halo has probably impacted me more than any other game, at least in a gaming standpoint. I've probably spent more time in the Halo franchise than any other gaming franchise, between all the Halo games. And still to this day, I still go on Master Chief Collection and replay through. I just did a marathon of like the first 3 Halo games. And I think I'm on like the last level of Reach. It's been other games have come out and I kind of put it on the back burner, but I still regularly go through and replay Halo games and play multiplayer sometimes. I'm not a big multiplayer guy, but Halo multiplayer has just always been part of who I am. It's just what I did growing up. We'd have the big LAN parties. We'd go to big like churches after hours when no one was there, and we'd set up like 5 TVs and projectors, and we would just play. We'd have like 16 people come out, and we'd just play Halo 2 on these huge TVs and projectors. We played, actually, I think it was a Call of Duty game, but we played Call of Duty on this giant projector screen in a church sanctuary, and it was like the coolest thing ever. And we would set TVs up in the house, and we'd have a TV in every room upstairs and downstairs, and we'd have like 16 people in my house just playing Halo, and eventually that turned to Gears of War, which I will be getting to later. Spoiler alert. So, yeah, Halo, I've been a big fan of Halo literally since it came out. 4 years old when it came out, played it ever since. Played every Halo game. As someone who has a lot of time invested in Halo and has kind of been a Halo expert since day one, I can give you the opinion that the 343 games do in fact suck. I don't think that's like questioned by anybody. I think that's common knowledge. Infinite was okay for like a month. 4 got better after 5. I will stand by the fact. So as someone who's not a big fan of multiplayer, I think Halo 4 has the best multiplayer. Just saying. I really enjoy it. Reach's multiplayer was great, but if it didn't have the bloom, it would be a lot better. I'm still salty about that. I suck at Halo 2 multiplayer. I suck at multiplayer in general. But I love the Halo franchise. I think 2 is probably the best one in overall scope of what it added to the series. And not only is Halo really important to me in a Halo sense, but without Halo, we would have never had a little company called Rooster Teeth. Now, Rooster Teeth is a whole other rabbit hole I could talk about. I'm not going to spend this whole video just talking about Halo and Rooster Teeth, although I could. Rooster Teeth, for the one person who doesn't know, they're back, is a media company, multimedia company. It was comprised of like 5 friends playing Halo. They started a machinima series called Red vs. Blue. I'm sure everyone's heard it. In my last video, I was recreating scenes from Red vs. Blue very poorly. And I did all that off the top of my head. I didn't rewatch the episodes or look up the lines. I didn't do it all verbatim. I didn't recite every single line, mostly because I'm not the biggest fan of putting profanity in my videos. So I didn't, because there would have been a lot of it. I'll say stuff in other people's videos, but not mine. I try to keep mine a little classier, just for my personal taste. But Red vs. Blue is a huge part of my life. That came out in 2003. I was 6 years old, and I wasn't allowed to watch it, but I watched it anyway. And I followed Rooster Teeth ever since. You know, it's funny, there's a lot of people that talk about, like, oh, I've been watching Rooster Teeth since Fails of the Week. Oh, I got into Rooster Teeth, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, no, I've been a fan longer than you. Everything you say is invalid. I'm the only person that can have a valid opinion on Rooster Teeth. That's a joke, obviously, but it's partially true. And, no, Rooster Teeth would not have existed without Halo. And I've been consuming Rooster Teeth content since I was 6 years old. I watched all of Red vs. Blue. Again, the later season sucked, but Bernie saved it. Achievement Hunter. Achievement Hunter wouldn't exist without Halo. I was a huge Achievement Hunter fan. Of course, Achievement Hunter sucked really bad at the end. Some of the new hires were not good. They catered more to the younger audience, and it's like, really, your fans are like 30, and you're catering to like 12-year-olds. All right, bro. And Ruby. Ruby would not have existed without Red vs. Blue, without Rooster Teeth, without Halo. And as much as it's fun to make fun of Ruby now, when it first came out, it was the biggest thing in the world. And I didn't like anime before Ruby. And as you might, if you saw my last video, you know that I know a thing or two about anime. And all that love and passion came from seeing Ruby for the first time. And I also Rooster Teeth, Ruby, and Red vs. Blue also helped strengthen my passion for music as well with the great scores from Jeff Williams. I am very passionate about that music, and yeah. So Halo was already very important to me, but what it spawned, what it created, the community that came out of it, and all the other things, Halo is probably the most important game in my life, in terms of shaping my life. And I know at the end of the day, video games don't matter and stuff like that, but it kind of does. It's the community that comes out of it. And as silly as it might sound, fictional characters kind of inspire you and shape things about your personality. There's a lot of things that I have done in my life because of a quote from a character, some inspirational thing a character has done. Luffy from One Piece, his natural spirit of how he goes about things, not taking no for an answer, his ambition, his will, not having regrets. That speaks to me as a person, especially at this point in my life I'm at right now, when I'm in a world of uncertainty. Having something like that to look up to, even if it's fictional, it's important. Anyway, that's enough about Halo. I'm just going to go in the order that I wrote these down. It's not in an order of importance. Mass Effect. I could talk about Mass Effect for like a year. When I said I've spent more time in Halo than any other franchise, I think that could probably be rivaled by Mass Effect. I have played through the Mass Effect trilogy, I think 12 times now, in total. Andromeda is not it's not horrible, but it's not good. It's a decent game. It's a great game if you don't know Mass Effect. It's literally just the dollar store version of Mass Effect. They took the plot, the enemies, the characters. It's all just watered down Walmart versions of the trilogy. The Mass Effect trilogy is a masterpiece in writing, storytelling, characters. Every character in Mass Effect is amazing except for Caden and Ashley. The world is great. The storytelling's amazing. The gameplay is Mass Effect 3 is where the gameplay got really good. That was actually fun gameplay. Mass Effect is also the home of one of the greatest DLCs ever created, the Citadel DLC. That goes without saying. Any list you look at of best DLCs ever, Citadel's always on there, and for good reason. Citadel is like the beach episode for Mass Effect, and I'm all there for it. I feel like I need to give more of a detailed critique on why I love Mass Effect. Like, why would you play through a game 12 times? And what's even more wild is I went on YouTube, and after 12 playthroughs, there's still stuff I missed. There's still stuff I didn't know was in the game. There are side missions, secret cutscenes. And what's also funny is, like, you'd think I would play the game a little differently across so many playthroughs. I don't. I play it the exact same way every time. Now, I have switched it up a little bit here and there, but for the most part, I kind of stay the same. I've done a couple. I think my last playthrough was a Renegade playthrough. I 100%ed the Legendary Edition, finally. The achievement that killed me was to beat most of Mass Effect 1, but it doesn't tell you how much. And I beat most of it, and it didn't pop. So I think I did something out of order. I think you have to do it like before you go to Vermeer or something. But, which if you don't know Mass Effect, that word means nothing to you. But yeah, Mass Effect 2, all in all, is probably my favorite. I kind of consider the three of them to be one big game. It's kind of hard to pick a favorite among the three. But, yeah, also there's too many people out there that disrespect Zahid, and those people are wrong. Same with James. Two of the best characters. I will not elaborate on that. Tali is overrated. Don't know why so many people love her. Liara is the best romance option. We all know this. Jack is the second best. And You don't like Miranda, you just like her ass. That's it. So, moving on, Jet Set Radio Future. Jet Set Radio Future is my favorite game of all time. It is my number one favorite, most beloved game ever. I've played through it billions of times. I love it. It's fun. It's stupid. It's a bad game, but it's a great game at the same time. It's always been one of those games that has just held a special place in my heart for years, and I will literally just go back and just play through it. And when my original Xbox died, I bought a 360 and played through it again. Jet Set Radio Future, it was kind of one of my first exposures to like anime, or at least Japan related media. It's super anime inspired. And what's funny is there's like this like kind of subplot in those games. There's like a lot of like underlying secrets and conspiracy theories that no one ever talks about because like people don't talk about Jet Set Radio. But I was thinking about making a short video on my theories just to get it out there because it's been in my head for like 30 years now. And yeah. But no, Jet Set Radio is a fun game. If you don't know what it is, it's basically a game about people that ride on rollerblades or inline skates. Rollerblade is actually a trademark brand. The sport is called inline skating. And I actually got points off a test in college for riding inline skating instead of rollerblading, and I literally argued with the teacher. I never argued with my teachers, but I knew I was right. And I argued with the teacher, and finally the only other kid in the class that was like born in the 90s spoke up on my side and I got my points back on the test. But anyway, Jet Set Radio, you play as this group of punks that ride on rollerblades and use magic graffiti, and like it's literally magic graffiti, like it's anime powers. It's literally like the soul of the street or whatever. And because you have to be able to see the soul of the street to use it. Basically, there's this evil tyrannical dictator that takes over Japan, and he's destroying all culture. And there is actually a kind of a plot twist that kind of, I feel like you don't get the plot twist if you don't have a dumb brain like me, because they don't really talk about it. It's just a lot of inferred storytelling. But it's just a fun, dumb game that I just cannot get out of my heart or brain. And a lot of it is also the soundtrack, the music. I'm gonna butcher this poor man's name. Hideki Naganuma. I think that's his name. The composer for Sega. Back when Sega made games. Yeah, JSRF was made by Sega. And the soundtrack is so infectious. Actually, Mike D from the Beastie Boys, there was this team of hip-hop artists called the Latch Brothers, and Mike D headed the project, and their whole purpose was to create and remix tracks for Jet Set Radio. And Naganuma also made tracks for it. His tracks were awesome. They're really hard to describe because it's really like he like created his own genre. And I'm not the biggest like hip hop fan, but just or pop or whatever genre those songs are. But I just love the way that they did it, and both that composer and the Latch Brothers, the way that they remix tracks. And they also, Ad Rock had vocals on a song on there. And there are some other songs too. There was like one song on there from a Western artist called Aisle 10 by Scapegoat Wax. That song is still on one of my playlists on Spotify. Great song. Really fun. And so yeah, so that, you know, I was big into skating. I was a rollerblade kid growing up, and I tried to skateboard for a little bit. I wasn't the best at it, But that's a great segue into the next game series, Tony Hawk, the Tony Hawk series. Now, a lot of people started with Pro Skater and Thug. I did not, because I wasn't old and did not have those consoles. So my first Tony Hawk game was American Wasteland, which is essentially Thug 3. I spent so much time in American Wasteland. I have beaten that game more times than I can count. Part of me buying that Xbox 360 was also to play American Wasteland again. I bought American Wasteland on Amazon just to play it again. I think I beat it in like 2 hours. Like, I would just go through it and try to beat it as fast as possible. Jet Set actually takes 5 hours. American Wasteland takes 2. And, you know, I grew up during that Tony Hawk era, during that skateboarding era where everyone skateboarded. And I loved it. I loved the culture. I wasn't good at doing it, but it, you know, it was a part of my childhood. And another thing I love a lot about the Tony Hawk games, again, is the soundtrack, is the music. Music is a big part of my life. Music is a big part of who I am. I'm one of those people that I pretty much can't function without listening to music. And a lot of the music I listen to today came from Tony Hawk. A lot of bands on the American Wasteland soundtrack are bands that I listen to this day. You know, and a lot of the songs on the American Wasteland soundtrack were covers. They did a cool thing where they took classic punk songs from old artists, and they brought in new artists, like new emo artists at the time. This is like 2006, and had them do covers of these classic songs. So you had like My Chemical Romance doing Misfits. You had Thrice doing Minor Threat. You had Rise Against doing Black Flag. Fall Out Boy doing Gorilla Biscuits. Thursday doing Buzzcocks. You know, and it was just, and there were some like pieces that were like from the original artist. Like you had Motley Crue on there. There was actually another Black Flag song on there that was the original version. And there's a lot of other hip hop and rap stuff on there that are still good songs that I don't particularly really listen to, but they were good pieces. They even had Mastodon on there, which was my first exposure to Mastodon. I do very much enjoy Mastodon. I'm actually going to see them live soon. But yeah, I fell in love with that soundtrack, and there's other bands on there. You know, you got like Sham 69, Circle Jerks, Oingo Boingo's on there, and Dropkick Murphys is on there, and a lot of other covers of songs. You had a cover of an Iggy Pop song on there. You know, Mike V's band is on there, which Mike V is also in the game. But, you know, just classic songs I still listen to. Like my whole punk playlist, 50% of my punk playlist is American Wasteland songs. But yeah, I also played Project 8. Was a big fan of Project 8. Oh, Bad Religion is on like every Tony Hawk game. And the drummer of Bad Religion, Brooks Wackerman, is actually in my favorite band of all time, Avenged Sevenfold, and I actually take his drum masterclass, which I haven't done in a while that I need to, because I'm out of practice on my Hertas and my double bass playing. Yeah, great songs on there that I still listen to on Project 8. Project 8 was a fun game. I was gonna say it was more grounded in reality than American Wasteland, but it's really not. The gameplay feels a little weightier. You know, I think this was when like skate was really becoming really popular, and it was kind of rivaling Tony Hawk. So I think they kind of made Tony Hawk feel a little more weighty and trying to make it feel a little more real. But after that, I didn't play Proving Ground when it came out, but I got it recently because Amazon sent me the wrong game. I ordered Project A and they sent me Proving Ground, and then I ordered Project 8 again. They gave me the correct one, but it ended up being cheaper than if I had gotten both outright because I think Proving Ground was more expensive. I was not a fan of Proving Ground. I went back later. I got a PS2, and I played Thug 1 and 2, and then I played the remakes of Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2, which I discovered even more bands on that Pro Skater remake. Billy Talent. Billy Talent's one of my favorite rock bands of all time. I discovered it through Tony Hawk Pro Skater remake. There's just great music all around. And I was never really into ska punk, but there were some really good ska punk songs on there that I got into. And yeah, the Tony Hawk stuff is like, it was more than just a game, it was a whole like community. It was like a whole lifestyle thing, and now I watch like X Games and Nitro Circus and all that stuff. I got so in love with like the extreme extreme sports community, and like watching professional skateboarding and all that, and it was all because of Tony Hawk. And also like I also used to watch a lot of Rob Dyrdek stuff, but again, the whole connection to skateboarding, and Jackass also tied into that too. I probably would have gotten into Jackass if I hadn't played Tony Hawk and learned about like Bam Margera and stuff, but knowing Bam Margera from the Tony Hawk games definitely was part of that. And there's a lot of skating and stuff referenced in some of those older ones, and there's a lot of crossover between like the Tony Hawk people and the Jackass people, and like Nitro Circus and their, and the MTV Rob Dyrdek stuff. There's a lot of crossover between all those groups. Also, the band Wolfmother and the Bloodhound Gang were friends with like Jackass and Bam Margera, which is crazy. Like, music's everywhere, man. Music is a great important thing. As you can see, I have a drum set behind me here, and so the next game series is a game series that actually kind of impacted me in real life, like for real, and that's Call of Duty. Now, Call of Duty was not what it is now. We're gonna go back in time, back to when Jordo was a wee lad, a wee boy. Back when Call of Duty made World War II games, and they actually had real history in them and were factual, and history is a big passion of mine. History was always my best topic in school. I went to college for history. I took like every history course my college offered, and because I just loved it so much. It's the only thing I ever really cared about in school. It's the only thing I enjoyed learning in school. I have a nickname in my friend group, the Lore Sage, because I just remember useless knowledge about everything, and I know so much about so many dumb topics, and a lot of that came from my love of studying history, because it's really all the same. It's storytelling, it's learning neat facts and learning old stories. It doesn't matter if it's real history or if it's like a video game or an anime, just all that kind of intertwined for me together. And that passion for history all started with Call of Duty. As funny as it might sound, I saw World War II and I found out it was a real thing that really happened. I was like, oh, what? And I had to learn more. I had to know everything. I had to know everything about it. Although there was one part of World War II that Call of Duty did not cover until Call of Duty World War II. And, young Jordo was not ready for that. But I'm gonna leave that there. I think we all know what part of history I'm talking about. It makes me want to go camping. Alright, so Call of Duty, outside of that, hasn't really impacted my life that much. It really just sparked my love of history. I was a part of the COD community for a while, though. You know, I was a big fan of all that. I played all the games up to like Black Ops 4. I didn't play Black Ops 4. I think that's the only one I've never played. Honestly, I think that's the only. Oh, and the first one. Never played the original Call of Duty. I played 2. I think Jason Statham was in the original before anyone knew who he was. Um, but I played COD 2. COD 3 was like the big one for me. I fell in love with COD 3. Still love it. And then 4 came out and just blew everyone's mind away. And then you had World at War, and then you had Black Ops, and in the Black Ops 2 days, that's what made I'm a big fan of the Vanoss crew. They blew up with Black Ops 2. Black Ops 2 was honestly, Modern Warfare 2 was a big peak in the COD community with multiplayer and online and stuff. Black Ops 2 was the next really big surge, and then it kind of died down until Modern Warfare 2019. Then it was Black Ops 2 all over again in terms of the community and the multiplayer and all that. And then Call of Duty just died. Just train wreck, just exploded and died in horrendous fashion. The new Modern Warfare 2 was good, but yeah, I'm not even gonna get into Modern Warfare 3. Oh, you didn't like it because you only don't like it because you didn't want to pay for it because you're poor. No, idiot. It was bad. It was terrible. They should not have marketed a DLC as a $70 game. Anyway, moving on. I was going to talk about, before I came up with the idea for this to talk about, I was going to talk about game developers and the ones I love now and the ones I used to love and why I don't love them anymore. And I think Activision was going to be on there. Because let's be honest, they're the ones really running Call of Duty, running and ruining. Alright. Hey guys, future editor Emu here. I just want to say real quick, I can't believe I forgot to talk about this when covering Call of Duty, but I forgot to mention that Call of Duty was my first exposure, or first real exposure to the band Avenged Sevenfold. The Easter egg cutscene at the end of Black Ops 2, the intro cutscene to the Origin Zombies map. Well, that was my first real exposure to hearing Avenged Sevenfold, seeing Avenged Sevenfold. And shortly after that, Avenged Sevenfold became my all-time favorite band. They're still to this day my favorite band. I have all their albums. I bought some of their albums multiple times. I have one on vinyl. I am obsessed with them, and I Rev was my first big drumming hero. That was the first big drive to really get me to actually want to pursue drums and play drums. So obviously, without Call of Duty, a big chunk of my life that wouldn't have happened. Avenged Sevenfold has their music has impacted me a lot. Has been with me through times good and bad. So I just wanted to add that in here real quick. Um, I was so caught up in the history and stuff and wanting to keep the show rolling that I completely forgot to mention this. I know I get more into my passion for music and drumming later on, but yeah, I just had to mention it here because Call of Duty was my first exposure to what I believe to be the greatest band ever. So the next game franchise I wanted to talk about isn't one that really affected my life like these other games, because this is one that I didn't really get into until I was an adult. And I mean, as you can see by the background of my studio here, my little podcast studio, that game is Resident Evil. The Resident Evil franchise is very dear to my heart. I've been a Resident Evil fan for about 10 years now. And I think I started with, which one did I start with? I started with either 4 or 5 because I was told those were the best ones. and that was just a lie. And insert that, was it Tyler the Creator meme? So that was a lie. Resident Evil 1, the remake version, which I hope they remake the remake, because the remake is like 20 something years old now. So I hold all the games to kind of the standard of the remake of Resident Evil 1. I played 0, I played Code Veronica, I played, which I really hope they remake, I played the 2 and 3 remake. People hate on the 3 remake. I don't know, I feel like people just like to hate on things. I thought it was fine. I beat it in like an hour. Or less than an hour. Resident Evil 4 is cool. Not my favorite. I don't think it's quite as good as everyone says it is, but it was an important game, you know? Like, Bioshock and Dead Space were, like, kind of inspired. I think Bioshock came out that same year, I think. I don't know. They're very similar to me. I mean, they're very different, but at their roots, they're kind of similar. I'm only talking the first Bioshock, which I kind of consider a survival horror. I know a lot of people don't. But it definitely had that kind of vibe going for it, at least in the beginning. And then, you know, Dead Space. Dead Space is literally just Resident Evil 4 and Event Horizon put together. As you can see by one of the characters I have on my balcony, you know, I am a Dead Space fan. That one's going to be an honorable mention, though. I'm sorry, spoiler alert. Yeah, Resident Evil 4. I did play Resident Evil 4 in VR, courtesy of my buddy Joe, and that was awesome. That was so cool. I didn't beat it, but it was amazing. It's so intense in VR. I'd never played VR before. It was really cool. I like called my parents downstairs and made them like look at it. It was so cool. But no, it was very intense. Unpopular opinion, I hate Resident Evil 5. I think it's the worst one. I think 6 is just barely better by its story. 6's gameplay was atrocious, though. And the tone and everything. I like to call Resident Evil 6 Resident Evil directed by Michael Bay. But Resident Evil 7, though. Resident Evil 7. I got the speedrun achievement for that one. Resident Evil 7 is the scariest Resident Evil. It is one of my personal favorites. I've beaten that one probably more than any other, besides the first one. And then Resident Evil 8. Resident Evil 8 just, like, took the best parts of 4, 7, and 1, and made a masterpiece. And, you know, I think they said Resident Evil 9 is going to be, like, fully open world. I think I heard that somewhere. Resident Evil 8 was basically open world. Like, it was very close. They made it sound, the article I read made it sound like Resident Evil had never tried open world before, but 4 and 8 had a lot of open world elements, especially 8. It was just kind of funny the way they wrote it, the way they worded it. Not roaded it. But I did love Resident Evil 8, how, like, the legacy dungeon areas were kind of a different genre of horror. You know, I liked that. You know, it's like Lady Dimitrescu's area was like classic Resident Evil with like the big mansion and finding items and puzzles. And then Donna's part was literally My Nightmare manifested, but it had that kind of Outlast feel, which, I should have put Outlast on here. Nah, it's fine. I do love Outlast. The second one was okay, but the first one is a classic. That's one of those games I'll just run through again for fun, and the DLC, of course. The DLC's like the best part. Outlast Trials was okay. I would have liked another like normal Outlast game, but it is cool. You know, multiplayer Outlast is fun. I'm really glad they didn't go like the Battle Royale route, which everyone kind of thought they were going to, or like the VR route. I like what they did, but I don't know. The multiplayer aspect, although it's fun, also kind of takes out the scariness of Outlast a little bit. In the atmosphere, this isn't even about Outlast. This is about Resident Evil. And then Moreau's part, I don't know, kind of made me think of Jaws, but also Resident Evil 4 a little bit, because it kind of felt a little quick-timey. You know, with having to, like, you jump across rooftops, and you gotta get the crank, and you gotta crank the thing, and then you got Moreau swimming around, and, like, it reminded me of Jaws. And then just a big grandiose boss battle, and then Heisenberg's part was literally just like Resident Evil 5. Just run and gun through like a maze and just shooting everything. It was definitely more action packed. I loved the boulder puncher reference that I had to pause the game because I was laughing too hard. That was amazing. I also like that the Duke makes a reference to the "What are you buying?" guy from Resident Evil 4. That was one of those things that like my whole family turned "What are you buying?" into like an inside joke before I even knew what Resident Evil was. Everyone in my family would always be like, "What are you buying?" And when I played Resident Evil 4 for the first time and I heard it, I was like, finally the stars aligned, because I didn't realize it was from that. It was so funny. But yeah, Resident Evil is a great series, and because of Resident Evil, I got into Devil May Cry. Because Devil May Cry was a spin-off for Resident Evil. But although really what got me into Devil May Cry is I had a friend in high school who's actually a YouTuber and a streamer. He's awesome. He's really cool. His name's Antonio Redgrave, which is a reference to Devil May Cry. He would dress up as Dante, and we did. I was part of video production in high school, and which I think I have some of those videos on my channel. They're very bad. They're not good, except for the music video. The music video was awesome. That was really fun to do. That was really cool. But yeah, so I was in video production, and I was like a senior, and I was helping some of the younger students. Some of the younger students were friends of mine, and we would stay after school and help them with their projects. And AJ was one of them. He was in a group with one of my friends, and in their videos were based around like video games in real life, and like bringing video game characters to the real world and having to like fight them. And Dante was one of those characters that appeared, and AJ did the full cosplay. And I remember at the time thinking it was kind of dumb and making fun of it and saying like, "Oh, what is he, just like goth Trunks?" And you know, because at that time I was into anime and I thought I was so cool. I was cool. I was the coolest guy in my school. I wore a black leather jacket, black skinny jeans, a chain wallet with flames on it because it was so cool. I would wear a red skull bandana. Actually, the bandana I wear in my videos. I would wear that around my face with the sunglasses. I had the sunglasses that snapped onto my real glasses because I was that cool. And then I'd wear my hood up. And I was the coolest kid in school. I was awesome. I would wear leather gloves, and like I was a dork. I was so stupid. I was so desperate for people to think I was cool. I thought I was Ghost from Call of Duty, you know. Oh man. Also, I was like really skinny back then. I was like 200 pounds, which is skinny for a guy my size. And yeah, I'm not anymore. But man, that was a time. And I would make fun of AJ's cosplay, and he would get mad at me, and which is probably why he stopped answering my DMs. And but yeah, I was actually on his channel. There's a video. I forget. Oh, what was it called? I don't remember. But I'm in it, and I play Luigi. And I had his Luigi. He gave me a Luigi costume to wear, and I took it home, and I never gave it back to him. And I guess he told all my friends about it for years, and never contacted me. And then I contacted him on stream one day. He was streaming Dying Light. Is that the name of the game? Great game. Great survival horror game. He was streaming that, and I popped on, and he was like, "Oh, you still owe me my Luigi costume." So I DM'd him and said, "I'll give it back." And he goes, "No, it won't fit me, and I have no reason for it." I'm like, "Okay, cool, awesome." Oh, that's great. He's a great streamer. He's a really good YouTuber. He's way better at this stuff than I am. He's been doing it for like 10 years, but he's just really naturally like kind of charismatic and good at it, and I'm just not. But I'm working on it. He also does like parkour, and he's like skilled with like weapons, like swords and bow staffs and stuff, and he's crazy. He's awesome, and good on him. Honestly, I'm all about self-improvement, fitness, martial arts. I love it. I do it myself. I'm just not good at it because I'm 350 pounds. But baby steps. I actually need to go to bed. Oh, I really need to go to bed because I have jiu-jitsu tomorrow. But anyway, we're halfway through the list. Next game I wanted to talk about. See, this is part of my problem. I just get on tangents. I could talk forever. In real life, you can't get 2 words out of me. But on here, I'm talking forever. Next game I wanted to talk about was the Dark Souls series. Dark Souls invaded my life. No pun intended. Invaded my life. Around the time I was going to college, first started between college and high school. And at first I didn't like it. It was hard. It was confusing and hard. And then one day it clicked and I fell in love. I'm a huge, massive Souls nerd. And I love From Software. They're one of my all-time favorite developers. And when I say the Dark Souls series, I don't just mean Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3. I mean all the FromSoft games. I haven't played them all. I never played Bloodborne or Demon Souls because I don't have a PlayStation. Because I'm stupid and I play Xbox. So, I feel like your parents buy you one console, and then that's just your personality for the rest of your life. Like they choose the team for you. You either get a PlayStation, a Nintendo, or an Xbox, and that's it. Or a PC. And I was an Xbox. So, so Dark Souls is what kind of started to get me more into the RPG world. Now, granted, the Dark Souls games are very different from other RPGs, but they're still RPGs. And got me more into hard games, games that actually took skill. I'm one of those people. I know people hate when you say this. Dark Souls is not really that hard. You just have to know how to play it. And it's hard to know how to play it. It takes a lot of effort and a lot of time. And I am not always the most patient person. And so it's very trying. But I love it. And not only do I love playing the game, I actually don't really enjoy playing the games that much, but I love the story. I love the world. Part of my love for lore, the whole reason I got nicknamed the Lore Sage was because of Dark Souls, was because I fell so in love with the world. And all my friends, all my cousins play it, and they just like to play the game for the game, and I'd be sitting there did you know that this item and connects to this and this character, blah, 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 and Solar's the sandworm and all that? And they're like, shut up, we don't care. Shut up, Jordan, we don't care. And then, and then I would say something, and they're like, that's not true, how do you know? And it's read the item description, dummy. And they're like, oh, yeah, shut up. Alright, next game, the man in the middle of the balcony there, that's not a balcony, what is that? What would that be called? I don't remember. I don't know architecture. Hotline Miami. Hotline Miami was introduced to me by a friend in high school. It was the first real computer game I ever really played, at least at that time, in the modern sense. But Hotline Miami kind of opened my world to new types of games. It was hard. It was actually my Dark Souls before Dark Souls. Very challenging game, very tricky game Takes a lot of time and skill and randomness, it feels sometimes. But I love Hotline Miami. The second game's good too. I don't think I've ever beaten the second game. I've gotten pretty far. But the first game I've played through a bunch of times. I own the Hotline Miami collection on 3 different systems. I own it on Xbox, on my PC, and on my Nintendo Switch. It's just a great, fun game to throw on. It was like, it might have been my first dual stick. Yeah, I think it was my first. I've only played like 2 dual sticks. And, you know, its influence can be felt in a lot of things. You know, like that game, My Friend Pedro. Everyone said it felt like if Hotline Miami was a side-scroller. Also, there was that scene in John Wick 4, which apparently, according to the movie people, it was not inspired by Hotline Miami, but, like, come on, dude. Like, come on. You got the top down through the rooms, and he's using shotgun, and he's even moving like Hotline Miami and throwing stuff, and they get the techno music. Like, come on. You're not telling me that's not inspired by Hotline Miami. And I see, like, the type of artwork everywhere. Like, that type of, like, the background. I used it in my thumbnail for my Gmod video. I love that style of artwork. And the music, the soundtrack. The music is so good. As someone who's not really big into all that synthwave stuff, it kind of opened my mind. Because there's this, like, post-punk synthwave band called Gunship. And they have, like, the Hotline Miami artwork. And their music kind of reminds me a bit of, like, the Hotline Miami soundtrack, and I got really big into that, like, art style and music style because of Hotline Miami. And, you know, Jacket is one of my favorite characters. You know, and I love retro 80s stuff, you know. And that was retro 80s before Stranger Things made it cool to like retro 80s stuff. 80s was like the best decade ever, let's be honest, at least for fiction. I'm pretty sure, you know, D&D and Warhammer both started in like the 80s. You know, I'm a big Warhammer fan. Not so big into the tabletop, but I've gotten really big into the 4-letter word, lore. Got really big into the lore. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about Hotline Miami. Really fun game. More games should let you throw your gun at people and knock them out. You know, that's a real life thing. You know, that's the only good thing about that Halo TV show that Paramount did. The scene where Master Chief runs out of ammo and beams his pistol into a grunt's face. That's the only good part of that show. So the next game, I'm almost done. I only got 2 more, a couple honorable mentions. Don't worry. I'm more saying this to myself because it's 1 in the morning and I have to get up at like 7 tomorrow. So, Guitar Hero. I grew up during the big Guitar Hero explosion. Guitar Hero was like the biggest game in the world. And, Guitar Hero really, the main reason why I have Guitar Hero on here, and you can kind of lump Rock Band into this too, music. Music is a big part of my life. It's always been a big part of my life. It's a big part of my family. I come from a very musical family. Not a very accomplished one, but a very passionate one. Almost everyone in my family plays an instrument or sings. My dad's family, like his siblings and my grandparents, used to tour around locally and like sing and play at churches and stuff. Music's always been a big thing for them. My uncle pursued music for many years. My uncle is a musical genius. He teaches in schools and stuff. Like, he is a musical savant. He's one of those annoying people that can just pick up any instrument and just play it perfectly with no practice. It's really annoying. But no, it's great. And I've learned a lot from playing with him. He's taught me so much about music. But Guitar Hero exposed me to so many different kinds of music, different eras of rock and metal music, and different bands. And a lot of bands that I love today, I heard of for the first time in Guitar Hero. AFI, my second favorite band ever. First heard them in Guitar Hero 3, Miss Murder. Slipknot, I discovered through Guitar Hero. Metallica, I kind of knew of, but they were also in there. Queens of Stone Age. I already knew about Disturbed before that game, but it was still cool to have that in there. I'm blanking on other bands right now, but that was a big part of it. I think I discovered Chop Suey through Rock Band. System of a Down is one of my top 10 favorite bands of all time, maybe top 5. But yeah, just the love of music and honestly, part of me playing drums started with Rock Band. That's kind of when I started. Before I played for 5 to 10 years before I played drums, I was obsessed with the idea of playing drums and just didn't have the means to. And then when I was in college, I started going to my uncle's house and playing his set, and that's how that started. I've been playing for 9 years now. But and it's just such a big part of my life, and games like Guitar Hero and stuff were part of that musical obsession. And so then that takes me to the last of the main 10 I wanted to talk about today. The last one being Gears of War. Gears of War was the natural succession to Halo. Gears of War 1 came out just before Halo 3, I think, or around that time. Maybe it was a little after. And it was a 360 launch, I think. And I actually have a Gears of War 360. And Gears of War was that was when I was starting to get a little older. Actually, I wasn't that old. I wasn't allowed to play it with the gore on at first. It's funny, actually. I think my parents cared less about the gore and more about the swearing. But in the first game, you could only you turned off both. You couldn't choose one or the other, which is really weird when you think about it. The priorities there are kind of iffy, but nonetheless, Gears of War was awesome. That replaced the Land Knights. That replaced Halo in the Land Knights was Gears of War. And I played all the Gears of War. Again, another series I've spent so much time in. Gears of War 2 is still my favorite to this day. I think that's most people's favorite. Again, it's just the evolution, what it added to Gears, and the story was so much more in-depth, and the characters were better written. But no, the whole Gears of War series is great. 5 was terrible. Was 5 the terrible one? No, 4. No, maybe it was 5. What am I thinking of? I think my brain just slightly imploded. No, 5 was okay. I liked 5. What am I thinking about? I don't know. I didn't mind 5. 4 was a little lacking. Tactics was okay. I'm not a big fan of those games. But the story was cool. It added a lot to the lore. Lore, it always comes back to lore. Great lore. Great story. The world of Gears of War is very dark and very disturbing. Almost on an Attack on Titan level. Yeah. Gears of War 3 wasn't bad. It was good. Judgment was the bad one. Yeah. They had cool ideas. They had cool ideas in Judgment. The whole the declassified missions, that was a cool idea. The Ram Shadow DLC in Gears 3 was Gears 3. Awesome. Great DLC. One of the best DLCs ever, in my opinion. Not as good as Citadel, but it's up there. But yeah, that one wasn't so much impactful as it was just a game I played a lot of. And I am a big Gears fan, and always will be. So the honorable mentions I wanted to talk about, just a couple. One of them is Red Faction, big Red Faction fan. That series is kind of dead at this point. I was mainly a fan of Gorilla. I actually have a video on this channel from like 12 years ago of me playing Gorilla. It's a terrible video. Don't watch it. Because I was like, what was I, like 15? But that was like one of my first videos I ever made. I was new to all this stuff, and I'm still new to it 12 years later. But Red Faction was fun. Armageddon. I played a lot of Armageddon. That one was great. That one was almost more of just a standard third-person shooter. Guerrilla was more open world. That was kind of one of my first exposures to an open world game. Actually, yeah, that was my first like open world game, like real open world. But yeah, Red Faction, I've always been a fan of it, and kind of wish they'd bring it back. Is Volition still around? Do they still exist? Did they close? I don't know. I need to follow up on that because I know Saints Row kind of died, and yeah, I miss Red Faction. You know, there was actually a live action Red Faction movie that was set between Guerrilla and Armageddon. That's actually canon. And I think it was like a straight to DVD. Next honorable mention, Alan Wake. I love the Alan Wake series, and it's kind of less Alan Wake and more Remedy. You know, all the Remedy games are kind of connected. I love Remedy. Remedy's like my favorite developer of all time. And Alan Wake just added such a refreshing change to like the survival horror formula. And Alan Wake 2, I think Alan Wake 2 should have won Game of the Year that year. Now, granted, Baldur's Gate 3 was more than deserving. Love Baldur's Gate 3. You know, if Alan Wake was going to lose, I'm happy it lost to that one. But Alan Wake 2 was so good. And the people that don't understand Alan Wake 2, they're like, oh, it's just a game where you look at a board and put up pictures. No, shut up. You only played the first 5 minutes, so you don't get an opinion. Alan Wake 2 is amazing. The musical number alone should have gotten a Game of the Year. And the fact that they did the musical number live was amazing. You know, and the DLCs were great too, and I'm very pumped for Control 2. I loved Control 1. Very excited for Control 2. If I had done my idea of talking about developers, which I probably still will do, that might be another episode. Remedy's definitely going to be on there. Devil May Cry, I talked about briefly. Love the Devil May Cry games. Got into them again as kind of a mix of influence from Resident Evil and my buddy AJ. They both kind of nudged me in that direction. I've played all 5 Devil May Cry games. Oh, and the reboot, 6. I still to this day do not understand why people hate that reboot so much. I love it. I think it's like the best one. I tend to be like the minority on so many opinions when it comes to like video games and anime and stuff. I don't know why. I mean, I'm clearly right. But no, the Devil May Cry games are great. I don't care if I don't play them correctly. You know, I don't always do the greatest, craziest combos. You know, that's part of why I suck at fighting games. But they're fun. Yeah, the story's kind of throwaway, but the characters are memorable. It's silly. It's lighthearted. You know, Dante's awesome. Dante's a great character. Dante in Devil May Cry 5, like, reminded me a lot of Nathan Fillion for some reason. Something like just the way they aged him. But, yeah, he's great. Fun character. Great game. I think my two favorite parts in, like, all of Devil May Cry are both Dante moments, and they're both in Devil May Cry 4. And one of them is when the whole soliloquy scene, like the Shakespearean soliloquy between Dante and Angus in the church before the boss fight, is so funny. I was rolling, crying. And then my other favorite moment is The scene where Dante has like the backpack that lets him throw the red like swords, and he's throwing them into the gate, and he's just making all the dirty jokes. And he's like, first I whip them out, and then I thrust them in, and it's like, that was so funny. That was like one of the funniest moments ever. But Devil May Cry is just a great time, great laugh. I just beat the third one for the first time recently, and epic game, great game. I don't use the word epic lightly. I hate that word because it was so overused. Don't use it lightly. The scene where Dante and Virgil team up and they do the pistol thing, they did that in AJ's video. They did that, and I didn't understand it at the time, and then I saw it in the game. I'm like, oh, that was so cool. That was the coolest thing ever. I get it now. I understand. But yeah, love the DMC franchise. I DMC and Resident Evil made me a big Capcom fan. Those are really the only games from Capcom I play. I have played Bayonetta. I'm not really a Street Fighter fan because I'm not a fighting game fan. Although if I were to get into fighting games, I probably would play a Street Fighter. But I mean, I like the fighting games that are about things that I know, because I like to play as a character. You know, like the Dragon Ball games, the JoJo games, you know, the Injustice. I even played the Naruto games, you know, and they weren't bad. They were good for being Naruto. They were fun. Still not a big Naruto fan though, but I did enjoy the game. What was it, something Storm or something? Ninja Storm 4? That was fun. You know, I enjoyed it. The characters are good in Naruto. Like, all the characters except for Naruto and Sasuke, you know, the ones that get like 1 second of screen time, in favor of 2 of the worst written characters in anime. I'm gonna get off this before I get a brick thrown through my window. But, you know, fighting games outside of like the Dragon Ball ones and the JoJo ones, you know, I play those games because I like the characters, and then when that kind of fades away and it's just the game, I don't like it anymore. I don't know. I've never liked fighting games. Probably because I'm bad at them. And then my last honorable mention is Dead Space. I didn't mention Duke Nukem on here. Oh no, Duke, I'm sorry. I love Duke Nukem. I think I like the character more than the games. The games are fun. They're just fun, mindless shooters. Well, the third game did require a little bit of thinking, but Forever was mostly a mindless shooter. I didn't mind Forever. I love Duke Nukem. Love the character. He's funny. But Dead Space, I brought up Dead Space already. Again, great survival horror series. Dead Space was like the game that kind of got me over my fear of scary stuff. I used to be a huge coward when it came to scary movies and scary games and stuff. And then I played through Dead Space, and you know, it kind of toughened me up. You know, and now all I do is watch like scary movies and play horror games. Like, it's like my favorite genre. And it was mostly because of Dead Space. Also, Dead Space is based off Event Horizon, which is one of the greatest horror movies ever. And I don't care what the nostalgic critic, whatever his name is, says. He's stupid. The Event Horizon is awesome. It's not boring. It's suspenseful. That guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Yeah, Dead Space is just fun. I played through Dead Space 2 like 3 times, and I barely remember it. Dead Space 3 wasn't as bad as everyone said. I liked some of the elements they added into it. But yeah, it did kill the franchise. And it wasn't the developers' fault. It was their corporate overlords. They're the ones that told them not to make a scary game. Because after the game came out and failed, they put out a DLC, and it was genuinely terrifying. It was probably scarier than the first game, or as scary. You know, and it was awesome. And it's really sad to know that the developers were willing to make something good and just weren't allowed to. And that we could have had something way better, and we could have gotten the 4th game. Yeah, and maybe more. But I guess we'll never know. That was another thing I was kind of going to get into in my, if and when I do the developer video. You know, I'll try not to be ranty, but I don't understand why corporations can't just let games make what their fans want. Because they don't make money from it when they don't. They do what the corporation says, and the game tanks. Same with movies, and I don't understand it. You'd think these companies would want money, and they just keep throwing it away by making horrible things that no one wants. Anyway, so yeah, that was my 10 impactful games with honorable mentions. I don't know. I just like to share my thoughts on things and talk about things I like. And thanks for listening if you did. I don't know how long this recording's been. I think it's been over an hour, maybe 2. But yeah, thanks for listening. Hope you found something insightful, or you just think I'm psychotic, which I am. That's fine. But yeah, I've been standing in this closet for far too long. I need to go to bed. This was fun. I'd like to do this again sometime, and maybe, hopefully in the future, I'll do a podcast with Joe, and the two of us can talk about things. I don't know what we'll talk about. I mean, we're very antisocial people, so the thought of us doing a podcast is hilarious when you really think about it. But yeah. Until next time. Thanks for listening. I've been the Snoopy Emu, and this has been my little podcast. And the next time I make this video, I'm gonna have to set up this set again, and hopefully it won't take me an hour this time. It should not have taken me an hour the first time, but it did. But yeah, thanks for tuning in. I'm bad at outros. I'm so bad at it. I don't know why I'm horrible with outros. I just can't end it. I just can't shut up. So I'm just gonna shut up. Bye.